At the beginning of this movie, we see a spacecraft drifting in the darkness of space. The year was 2154. It was a time when humans had nearly exhausted all of Earth's natural resources. In search of a new source of energy, humanity set out toward a new planet called Pandora. As the spacecraft moves toward Pandora, a man suddenly wakes up from one of the sleeping pods aboard. It is Jake Sully. At that moment, we hear Jake's voice. He says, 6 years ago, when we left Earth, we've all been sleeping in these cryopods ever since. He further reveals, I was never actually part of this mission. It was my brother Tommy who was involved in the project, and he was a professional scientist. But just a few days before this journey, some thugs shot and killed my brother Tommy over a small amount of money. Fortunately, since we were twins, my DNA was a perfect match with his. As a result, I had to take his place on the project. The Resource Development Administration, RDA, had invested a lot of money in my brother. And as for me, I was a soldier and lost both legs in combat. Then we see that Jake and all the others on the spacecraft have arrived on the planet Pandora. There, Jake notices many large robots alongside humans. But the humans are wearing masks and carrying firearms. They were all soldiers back on Earth, but here they are working for money. Since the atmosphere of this planet is not suitable for humans, they cannot breathe normally here, so they need oxygen masks to survive. Next, we are introduced to Colonel Quaritch, the head of security operations for the project on this planet. He addresses the new recruits, saying, "This planet is worse than hell. Everything here is poisonous, the air is hard to breathe, and everything wants to kill you. If you want to survive, you'll have to take responsibility for your own life." From the Colonel's words, it was clear that he didn't like this planet or the creatures living on it. After the briefing, Jake is taken to a laboratory where he is shown several large clones. These were, in fact, clones designed to resemble the native inhabitants of the planet. They were created by combining human DNA with the DNA of the planet's natives, known as the Nasics. So, although they looked like the natives, they carried human DNA within them. This was the result of a biological experiment, which allowed a human brain to fully control these clones. There, Jake is shown the clone that was originally created for his brother Tommy. Since Jake and Tommy share the same DNA, the clone is now considered a replacement for Jake. These clones are called avatars. That's why this biological experiment is named the Avatar program. And here Jake meets Dr. Grace Augustine, the head of the Avatar program. In fact, Grace had no need for Jake, she needed his brother Tommy, who is now dead. Frustrated by the situation, Dr. Grace storms off to speak with Parker Selfridge, the program's administrator. She tells him, "I don't need a soldier. What I need is a scientist." Parker then tells Dr. Grace, "We are very lucky that Jake's DNA matches his brother's. And I'm assigning Jake to your team as a security officer. If we don't look like the natives of this planet, it'll be harder to bond with them. But our relationship with them is already becoming competitive." In response, Dr. Grace says, "If we start shooting at them, that relationship will only get worse." At that moment, Parker shows Dr. Grace a piece of rock called unobtanium, which is found in abundance beneath the surface of this planet. Parker further explains, "We are here on this planet for this valuable mineral alone. Back on Earth, it sells for over $20 million per kilogram. The entire cost of this project, including your scientific research, is funded by this mineral. So, anyone who stands in our way must be removed." You already know that the Earth had become greatly damaged. The population had increased nearly threefold. Proper living and food arrangements were deteriorating. And all kinds of resources on Earth were running out. Yet, despite all this, technology was advancing rapidly. Transportation systems had also improved significantly. People could easily travel from one planet to another. But operating the transportation machines required a huge amount of fuel. This fuel was a mineral called unobtanium. That's why unobtanium was so valuable. And Pandora was the only planet where this mineral could be found. Next, we see Jake being taken to a sleeping chamber. This is a machine where, upon entering, a person falls into a deep sleep. In the sleeping chamber, while the human consciousness remains completely asleep, the clone or avatar is fully awake. And when Jake's avatar awakens, he feels extremely happy because his legs are working properly within this avatar. For the first time, he can stand on his own 2 feet. Then he leaves the lab and goes outside. Once outside, he starts running as fast as he can because it feels like a dream to him. As a person without legs, now being able to run on his own 2 legs is the greatest joy he has ever experienced. Dr. Grace arrives there as well and asks Jake, "How do you feel now?" Jake replies, "You can't describe my feelings in words." At night, all the clones are put to sleep in their sleeping pods. When they fall asleep, Jake wakes up in his human body. In other words, when the avatar sleeps, the connected human wakes up. And when the human sleeps in the sleeping chamber, the avatar remains awake. The next day, Colonel Quaritch calls Jake to him. He says, "I've reviewed your records and found that you have participated in major battles. That's why we need a soldier like you." The colonel also expresses his distrust in this project. He explains that beneath the villages where the natives live, there are huge deposits of unobtanium. Therefore, he wants you to go to them, blend in with them, befriend them, do whatever you must. But when the right time comes, you will tell them to evacuate the village so we can extract all the unobtanium from that area. And if you succeed in doing this, I will fix your legs, that is, your real legs will be restored. Then Jake tells Colonel Quaritch, "I will definitely work for you." The next day, Jake, Grace, Norm, and some others board a helicopter and head toward the jungle. This is where the natives of the planet live, along with many very dangerous creatures. Upon arrival, Grace begins collecting plant samples, while Jake carefully observes the strange and unusual things in the jungle. There, Jake sees a very beautiful flower-like plant. Whenever he tries to touch it, the plant closes up and shrinks. So Jake tries touching one plant after another, causing all the plants around him to close. Suddenly, a dangerous, enormous creature appears before him. Grace also spots the creature. So she tells Jake, "Don't be afraid. Stay right where you are. This creature won't harm you." But when the creature charges toward Jake, he yells at it to scare it away. Seeing this, the dangerous creature stops. Jake thinks the creature might have retreated to the trees after seeing him, but that's not the case. Behind Jake, there was another dangerous creature, which is why it stopped. This creature is the most dangerous among the native inhabitants of this planet. So Grace tells Jake to run away from there as quickly as possible. Jake does exactly that. The creature relentlessly chases after him. While fleeing, Jake comes across a large waterfall. With no other option, he jumps into the waterfall, and in doing so, manages to save his life. But as a result, he becomes separated from his friends. Jake doesn't know what to do or where to go. Just then, we see someone watching him from atop a tree. It is one of the Nasik's natives named Neteri, who takes aim at Jake. As his arrow flies toward Jake, a strange, jellyfish-like floating flower lands on the arrow. As a result, he removed the arrow he was aiming at. While wandering alone in the jungle, night falls. He begins to hear the terrifying sounds of the wild creatures of this planet. After much struggle, he manages to light a torch, but as soon as the torch is lit, Jake notices a pack of dangerous dogs surrounding him around the perimeter. Jake tries desperately to escape from them, but he is not strong enough to fight off so many creatures alone. The strange dog-like animals begin to attack him. Just then, the girl, Neteri, rushes in, drives the dogs away, and rescues Jake. This is how Neteri saves Jake's life. Then, as Neteri starts to leave, Jake follows closely behind and surrenders to her. Jake says, "I want to learn everything from you." Neteri replies, "People who come from the sky can't learn anything because they have no respect for nature. So you shouldn't have had any hope here." Then, those strange jellyfish-like floating flowers start landing one by one on Jake, just like the flower that landed on Neteri's arrow when she was about to shoot him. Seeing this, Neteri suddenly becomes angry. Jake asks her, "What is happening?" Neteri replies, "These are the sacred seeds of the Tree of Souls. Your soul is very pure." Because of this, Neteri agrees to take Jake with her. At that moment, a group of the planet's natives arrive riding strange horses called Pali by the Nasiks. They capture Jake and bring him before the leader of their clan. There, we learn that Neteri's father is the chief of the clan, and his mother is the spiritual leader of the clan. So, Neteri's mother places Jake's blood on her tongue and realizes that Jake's soul is innocent and pure. There, Jake says, "I want to learn your customs. I want to master how you hunt as well." Because Jake's soul is pure, they agree to teach him, and the responsibility of training him is given to Neteri. Later, when night falls and Jake's avatar falls asleep, Jake wakes up in the sleeping chamber. He then recounts everything that has happened to him. Everyone there is surprised to hear that Jake's avatar is still alive, because they had thought his avatar had long since died in that harsh jungle. Jake then tells them, "I have earned the right to enter their community, and they have agreed to teach me their customs. I am now a member of their clan. Hearing this, everyone there becomes very happy. Then Peter shows Jake a 3D map of the planet and says, here is where their village is located. The area spans about to 200-300 kilometers and contains vast deposits of unobtanium. So you must get them to leave that place, because I don't want any bloodshed. Jake then asks, what if they refuse to evacuate their village? Colonel Quaritch replies, you have only 3 months, and if you fail to complete your mission within that time, we will use harsh methods, which will be very devastating. Because of this, Jake begins going to the village every day, as Neythiri starts training him, teaching him how to survive in the jungle, how to run through the trees, and how to use weapons. Meanwhile, Jake also begins to learn their customs with complete dedication. Very quickly, he masters their life skills and traditions. Therefore, Neythiri tells Jake, you are now fully prepared to become a Narsix. This is actually a religious ceremony of their species, where the inhabitants of Pandora officially recognize someone as a Narsix once they have completed their training. It means this is a kind of process to become a guardian warrior. Then Neythiri says, you must participate in this religious ceremony. You have to recognize your Ikran. The Ikran is a huge bird native to this planet, which the people here ride to travel from one place to another. But a Narsix can ride only one Ikran in their entire lifetime. So you will have to work hard and go far to find yours. So Jake completes the training with the rest of the clan members, and then they all set out to find their Ikran birds. Along the way, Jake sees them crossing enormous mountains higher than the clouds. They reach a place where many Ikran birds live. Then Neythiri arrives there, riding her own Ikran, where Jake and the others are waiting. Then Neythiri tells Jake, you have to find your Ikran. Jake asks her, how will I find my Ikran? Neythiri replies, it will attack you. So you must quickly launch an attack on those birds. As soon as they arrive, an Ikran attacks Jake. After much struggle, Jake manages to control the Ikran and begins to ride it. At first, Jake faces many difficulties, but after a while, he learns how to control the Ikran. Then Neythiri and her Ikran fly over there, and the two of them soar together for a long distance, as by now Neythiri and Jake have begun to like each other. One day, while Jake and Neythiri were traveling on their Ikrans, a massive red bird, resembling an Ikran, appeared from the sky and started attacking the smaller Ikrans. The bird attacks them, forcing Jake and Neythiri to flee. Somehow, they manage to survive and later sit together at night to talk. Neythiri then tells Jake, that bird is called the Toruk. But until now, only a few Narsix have ever tamed this mighty Toruk as their own. And the Toruk is the most powerful bird on this planet. Even my great-grandfather was able to tame this creature. At that time, Earth was going through a very difficult period. But when my great-grandfather tamed the Toruk and rode it, the loyal tribespeople united behind him. Along with these stories, Jake has developed a deep love for the tribe's customs over time. He has also passed their tests. Because of this, the Narsix have fully accepted Jake as a respected member of their clan. And when the ceremony concludes, Neythiri takes Jake to a sacred place and says, we all pray here. This tree is the sacred tree of our goddess, because from here we hear the voices of our ancestors. So when Jake connects his hair to the vine of that tree, he really hears the voices. Then Neythiri tells Jake, now you are one of us. You can now make arrows from the branches of this tree, and you may choose a beloved mate from among the tribe. Then Jake says, I have already chosen, so she must choose me Jew. Neythiri realizes that Jake is talking about her, and she replies, I have already chosen you Jew, you are mine. There, they come very close to each other. Early in the morning, when Neythiri opens her eyes, she sees a large machine tearing down all the trees around them and knocking them to the ground. So Neythiri tries to wake Jake. But on the other hand, Jake cannot get up because he is awake in his own body. Later, when Jake enters the sleeping chamber and falls asleep, his avatar awakens in the jungle. He then notices that the humans are completely destroying their sacred tree. So Jake quickly climbs onto the machine and breaks its camera. Seeing the camera break, a soldier starts shooting at him, so Jake escapes from there. Indeed, the 3 months given to Jake have ended, so Peter and Colonel Quaritch's men launch an attack on the area. Jake and Neythiri quickly reach their remaining companions, where they find Grace's avatar present as well. So Jake and Grace try to convince everyone that an attack is imminent and urge them to flee as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, the machine's camera was destroyed by Jake is seen by Colonel Quaritch on the footage. Therefore, the Colonel heads toward the place where Jake and his companions' sleeping chambers are located. These sleeping chambers were actually kept deep in the jungle, far from their base camp. When he arrives there, Colonel Quaritch first presses the button to shut down Dr. Grace's sleeping chamber, and then Jake's. As a result, their avatars collapse lifelessly to the ground where they were. Meanwhile, their human bodies awaken inside the chambers. They come out and try to convince Parker and Colonel Quaritch to stop destroying their settlement and the jungle, because all the plants here have formed deep connections with one another. In other words, the plants are interconnected and can communicate with each other. And in the village you are attacking above, many people live there, including small children. Peter then tells Dr. Grace, "I can give you only 1 hour. Within this hour, you must evacuate all the Navi from that area." Then Dr. Grace and Jake enter their sleeping chambers. Meanwhile, their avatars awaken. Jake once again tries to reunite with the other Navi. "Soldiers will arrive here soon and destroy everything you have. No matter how hard you try, you won't be able to fight their weapons. That's why humans sent me here." Hearing this, Neytiri completely breaks down. So Neytiri asks Jake, "Did you know all along that this destruction was going to happen?" Jake replies, "Yes, I knew. But now I love you, and I love this place. And I am one of you." Hearing this, Neytiri gets angry and says, "You will never be one of us." Then the rest of the Navi capture Jake and Grace. Their leader says, "We will fight against those humans." Meanwhile, Colonel Quaritch arrives at the site with his soldiers. There, he sees a massive tree, the largest on the planet. Colonel Quaritch notices that the Navi have captured Jake and Dr. Grace. At that point, Colonel Quaritch realizes there is no more time to wait. The Navi have refused to comply with their demands. So Colonel Quaritch gives his soldiers permission to attack. As a result, the soldiers begin using guns and explosives against the Navi, causing many Navi to die. Then Neytiri's mother, who is a spiritual leader, comes forward holding a dagger and stands before Jake, saying, "If you are truly one of us, then help us." Saying this, she cuts rope off Jake's hand. After that, Jake rescues Dr. Grace. Then Jake and Dr. Grace started to help them. But at that moment, the biggest trees start to break. So all escape from there. In the midst of all this, Neytiri's father died. On the other hand, Jake and Dr. Grace's chamber has been turned off. So their avatar again fall on the ground and awake on their own body. They were then imprisoned there. And then we see Trudy. She was a female pilot. She realizes that what humans are doing to the Pandoran inhabitants is wrong. So Trudy secretly rescues everyone from there and takes them to the sleeping chamber by helicopter. But they know that the colonel also knows where the sleeping chamber is, so Trudy takes the chamber by helicopter and hides it deep in the forest. Jack re-enters the sleeping chamber and wakes up in the avatar's body and sees that everything around him has been destroyed. So he decides that he must help these Navis, and he must prove his loyalty to them. Jake calls his Ikran and climbs onto its back, soaring high into the sky. Then he notices a Toruk flying below him. The Toruk is the most dangerous and largest bird on that planet. So Jake guides his Ikran to the exact location of the Toruk and quickly begins descending toward it. Then Jake jumps off his Ikran and lands on the Toruk. Meanwhile, all the Navi people were praying beneath the Tree of Souls. But they were very afraid because the Toruk was approaching them. This bird kills and eats almost all the animals on the planet. When they looked closely, they noticed Jake riding the Toruk and controlling it. So the Navi there bowed their heads in respect, because Jake was the only one of some who had been able to tame the Toruk and protect them. So Neytiri places her trust in Jake once again. Standing there, Jake boldly declares, "These people from the sky are coming toward us. They want us to leave this place. But now I want to send them a message. No matter what happens, I will never leave this land. Because this is our home." Then Jake adds, "Send for the other clans and tell them they must unite under the symbol of the Toruk Mark II. This mark is the sign through which they will be able to control the Great Toruk." And just like that, Jake's message spreads throughout the entire planet Pandora, causing the rest of the Navi clans to come together in unity. Then Jake approaches the Atokirina tree and ties his hair to one of its vines, praying to the goddess Eva of the planet Pandora. He tells the goddess, "I know we are fewer in number compared to humans, but I believe you dwell within every living being, animal, and bird on this planet. That is why we seek your help." The next day, as Colonel Quaritch led his soldiers toward the Navi's sacred place, the Atokirina tree, Jake and his companions prepared for battle. When the soldiers arrived, some Navi warriors attacked them from the sky, riding on their Ikran. Meanwhile, other Navi charge the ground troops, riding their horse called Palulukan, launching attacks from the land. Since Jake has the most powerful bird on this planet, he easily destroys many helicopters using his Toruk. Jake fights bravely alongside them. However, the humans have advanced weapons, especially explosives. On the other hand, the Navi have no powerful weapons except bows and arrows. Gradually, the people of Pandora begin to lose hope and start to give up. Then a moment comes when Neythiri gets trapped in a spot, and the enemies slowly advance toward her. Just as they are about to capture her, a message comes over their radio warning that something dangerous is rapidly approaching. Before the enemies can react, the terrifying creatures of this planet come toward them. The creatures, unaffected by bullets and bombs, begin attacking the humans and kill them one by one. Meanwhile, numerous Ikran birds in the sky also attack the helicopters. That means, the prayer Jake made to the goddess Eva was accepted. Because of this, the humans start to suffer defeat. But Colonel Quaritch refuses to give up. So he enters a robot and attacks Jake. A fierce battle ensues between Jake and Colonel Quaritch. During the fight, Quaritch tells Jake, "I think you've forgotten your reality. In fact, you are still a human." Then Colonel Quaritch discovered the sleeping chamber where Jake is resting. So, Quaritch begins to destroy that sleeping chamber. As a result, the oxygen inside the sleeping chamber runs out, causing the sleeping Jake to wake up. Consequently, his avatar gradually weakens. At that moment, before Colonel Quaritch can slit Jake's throat by grabbing a handful of its hair, Neythiri arrives and kills Quaritch with her poisonous arrow. Meanwhile, as Jake wakes up and emerges from the sleeping chamber, his avatar becomes inactive there. However, Jake struggles severely to breathe. Because outside their camp, humans cannot breathe in this planet's atmosphere without an oxygen mask. So Jake struggles to reach for the oxygen mask, but being paralyzed, he fails to lift it. As a result, Jake slowly moves toward death. By then, Neythiri realizes that Jake's human body is still inside the chamber. She quickly enters and, though initially confused, soon understands that Jake cannot breathe in this environment. So she puts her own oxygen mask over Jake's face. This restores Jake to full health. However, Jake does not want to leave Neythiri or return to Earth from the planet Pandora. All humans who came to this planet are sent back to Earth. Only those with pure hearts are allowed to stay on this beautiful planet. Jake no longer wishes to return to Earth, so he stays here. At that time, Jake's body and his avatar are laid to rest in their sacred place beneath the Tree of Souls. All the Navi present begin to pray near the tree, so that Jake's spirit can fully transfer into his avatar. And that is exactly what happens. As soon as Jake's spirit enters the avatar, he opens his eyes. This is how this beautiful film concludes. Thanks for watching. Stay with GRS Story.